Have you ever stopped to think, who was on God's side? Before off, let there be light. Since childhood, you've heard the same story. The beginning, the creation, the Word. But what if I told you there was something before all of this? Mysterious, living presence that walked with the Creator before time, before space, before even the existence of angels. No, this isn't in some esoteric book. It's in the Bible itself, hidden in plain sight, 10 Proverbs chapter 8. There amid seemingly poetic verses, a voice rises with authority. An entity that presents itself as someone real. I was with him as a master builder. I was created before all things. Who is this voice? Wisdom. But ... was wisdom a person? For centuries, religious leaders ignored or softened this passage. They said it was merely a metaphor, a figure of speech to describe human understanding. But what if it's more than that? What if we're facing one of the greatest hidden enigmas of divine creation? The idea that wisdom, the one that guided the formation of the worlds, is a living consciousness. Predating existence itself may sound strange, but it can also change everything you believe. This revelation may be uncomfortable. It may challenge what you've been taught. But that's precisely why you're here, right? To go beyond the obvious. To discover the mysteries of creation that were never revealed from the pulpit, but are present silently between the lines of the sacred text. Have you ever experienced this? The feeling that there is something more, something hidden. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you, and perhaps make you see Proverbs 8 in a new light. Because this voice, this entity, doesn't disappear. It leaves traces. It whispers between the pages, and what comes next may be the key to understanding the deepest enigmas of divine origin, ... And the most intriguing thing is that this voice of wisdom doesn't just present itself, bickers out, as someone who longs to be heard, understood, remembered. She stands alongside God as a co-creator, saying, "Before there were abysses, I was created." How can we ignore something so profound? How can we accept that this is just poetry, when everything about her vibrates with identity, consciousness, presence? If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far. Have you ever read Proverbs 8 from this perspective? Have you ever felt there's something hidden in the ancient words waiting to be revealed? Your comment isn't just an opinion, it's part of a larger conversation. A network of seekers who, like you, sense there's something beyond what they've been taught. And if this journey into the hidden world of creation has resonated with you so far, don't forget to like the video. It may seem like a simple gesture, but it's what tells the algorithm this matters. This is how this content reaches more people, more restless souls who are also searching for something that churches have silenced. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more hearts with this message. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because with each new episode, we delve deeper into the hidden enigmas of divine origin. Here, you're not a spectator. You're part of a revelation that is being reconstructed, fragment by fragment. And speaking of fragments, there is an even older clue hidden in the folds of time that may lead us to the true identity of this mysterious entity. The voice that echoes in Proverbs 8 is not an impersonal narration. It has rhythm, intention, and identity. Those who read with attentive eyes sense something different theirs if someone were truly trying to introduce themselves, to remind us of their existence. Wisdom is not just mentioned. She speaks, she narrates her own origins with details that escape common symbolism. I was established from eternity, from the beginning, before the earth existed, and it doesn't stop there. She describes her active participation in the creation of the cosmos, saying, "I was with him, like a craftsman." The original Hebrew term carries nuances that go far beyond the simple idea of helper. It refers to someone who designed, who organized, like a cosmic architect alongside the Creator. This changes everything, because it invites us to rethink not only the creation narrative, but our entire mental framework regarding the divine. The idea of a pre-creation entity with a voice, consciousness, and an essential role in the birth of the universe forces us to leave simplified theology behind and delve into the background of its origins. And this kind of revelation isn't comfortable. It touches our deepest beliefs, shaking the foundations of everything we've been taught. But that's precisely where transformation begins. This presence that predates the light, this feminine and creative spirit, tits, not isolated. In other spiritual traditions, it appears under different names. Sophia, Shekinah, the spirit of wisdom, always as an active, intuitive, powerful force. What we see in Proverbs 8 may be the reflection of a much older knowledge, hidden in symbolic language preserved in sacred texts, but obscured over the centuries by interpretations that prioritize dogma over revelation. Do you sense this too? That there are hidden layers beneath what was taught? That certain truths weren't exactly denied, but simply set aside? Carefully, many scholars have tried to reinterpret this passage as merely a poetic device. But the problem is that the very construction of the passage does not allow for a shallow reading. Wisdom is not something as to be God. She is someone HOAs, with him someone who stands as a witness to creation. Who was there before the mountains, before the springs, before the heavens were established? This doesn't sound like an abstraction. It sounds like a conscious, active, living entity. And this raises questions that go far beyond exegesis. We are talking about the essence of creation, the presence of an intelligence that predates the Word, a force that perhaps, even today, acts silently or perhaps is trying to remind us of who it is. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because if this wisdom was a living entity, then its exclusion from theological discourses was not a simple mistake, was a decision, a deliberate choice. And every decision has an impact. Every omission has a consequence. When we remove from the narrative one of the earliest voices of existence, what else do we lose along with it? The perception of the divine feminine, the connection with spiritual intuition, the very notion of balance at its origin. This is where a different journey begins. It's a search for something that was before our eyes, but that only now begins to be truly seen. And perhaps, by recognizing this forgotten presence, we also reconnect with parts of ourselves that have been silenced. Parts that carry wisdom, sensitivity, creativity. If you've felt this way in any way so far, comment below. I'm on this journey too. You know the beginning of everything well, don't you? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This is the starting point that spans generations, memories, and traditions. It's the verse that echoes from pulpits, in Sunday schools, in the corners of almost everyone's spiritual childhood. It is the foundation of traditional faith, the pillar of common understanding about the birth of the universe. But what if this beginning isn't as solitary as it seems? What if the Creator wasn't absolutely alone in that moment we call the beginning? There's a dark, subtle, almost hidden detail that few notice, but it's there, embedded in Proverbs 8 like a telltale crack in the wall of traditional narrative. Wisdom says, I was established from eternity, from the beginning, before the earth was created. This isn't a vague statement. It's a declaration of existence, of antiquity, of a presence prior to matter. How does this fit with what you've been taught? Because, if anything, it was already with God, from the beginning. Then perhaps the very concept of beginning needs to be reconsidered. And when we begin to question the foundations, it's inevitable that new possibilities will emerge, yawned with them, a profound transformation of mindset. This kind of revelation has a real impact, not just spiritual, but existential. Because when you understand that there was another presence alongside the Creator, an active consciousness that participated in the divine project, you begin to rethink your place within this creation, no longer as a product of a solitary act, but as part of a chain of intelligences, decisions, and manifestations that go far beyond our linear understanding of time. This affects how you read the Bible, how you interpret spirituality, how you connect with the invisible. And this realization is uncomfortable because it breaks patterns. It challenges what has been oversimplified over the centuries. Looking deeper into the sacred text, you realize that traditional faith isn't wrong, but it's incomplete. Like a painting that's been exposed to dim light for so long, it's now beginning to reveal colors and shapes that were there all along. The wisdom in Proverbs 8 isn't a theological footnote. A central figure that, detoned for some reason, has been pushed to the margins of mainstream religious discourse. But why? Why silence a presence that claims to predate the abysses, the springs of water, the mountains, and the heavens? Why transform a living voice into a mere abstraction? These questions are not simple. They take us behind the scenes of doctrinal construction, where human decisions shaped centuries of spiritual understanding. And like every decision, these choices had consequences. Perhaps the greatest of these was to dispel the most intuitive, most profound, and most mysterious aspect of divine creation: the presence of the spiritual feminine as the organizing force of the cosmos now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this shift is not exclusive to the Christian tradition. It recurs in various cultures where female figures of wisdom are pushed to the symbolic plane, while the divine is invested almost exclusively with masculine attributes. But the original text, the source, holds another narrative, hidden truth that begins to emerge. Like an ancestral memory that was never fully forgotten, silenced. It is this memory that we are reclaiming here. And in doing so, we are not rejecting faith. We are completing it, giving voice to what has always been present, but for too long was ignored. Wisdom as an archetype and as an entity has something to teach us about balance, origin, and the purpose of existence. It invites us to listen again to the beginning, but this time with the ears of the soul open. Comment here. That makes sense to me. That's where everything begins to unravel. Because when wisdom speaks in Proverbs 8, she doesn't just narrate. She takes center stage. She says of herself, "I was established from eternity." That's no ordinary phrase. We're talking about someone or something that asserts itself as existing before, from the beginning of time, before the earth, before any visible structure of creation. That would be grand enough coming from a prophet, an angel, a celestial being. But no, this is what wisdom herself says. And she speaks as one who remembers, as one who was there, as one who saw it all happen, detail by detail. This statement completely changes the way we've been taught to read Scripture. Because if we're dealing with a metaphor, then this metaphor possesses a strange autonomy. It acts, observes, participates. What's more, it positions itself as the architect of the universe. It says, "I was with him, as one at his side, and I rejoiced day after day." This isn't generic poetic language. This is personal narrative. It's testimony. And testimony of this kind demands a response, because it forces us to ask an uncomfortable question: who, other than God Himself, could make such a statement? Tradition has pushed this passage into the realm of the symbolic. They said it was a representation of divine intellect or the order of things. But if you look closely, you'll see that this doesn't entirely hold up. Because wisdom is not described as a passive attribute of God. It is not a thought, nor an abstract energy. It speaks with emotion, with memory, with identity. And this detailed voice with identities exactly what makes it all so uncomfortable. for certain interpretations. Imagine the impact of this. A female entity predating time with a direct role in creation. This shatters structures. It challenges dogma. And it's not because she contradicts Scripture, it's because she's there, just not in the way most expected. And when something is present but silenced, it's because someone, at some point, decided it was too dangerous to keep in the spotlight, which leads to an even deeper revelation. We're not just faced with a curious verse. We're faced with a hidden truth carefully positioned in the margins of the text, but one that carries the power to transform the entire narrative of creation. That's where the taboo comes in, because giving voice to this wisdom is, for many, challenging a theology built with overly rigid bricks. But ignoring this presence is denying part of the divine mystery itself. And perhaps that's why you feel, as so many do, that something is missing, that there's a gap in what has been taught. And this gap, in fact, may be the absence of this ancestral figure who cries out to be heard. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if wisdom is a living consciousness, then what does this tell us about the origin of divine language itself? About how God communicates, expresses, and manifests? And further, what does the exclusion of this entity reveal to us about the type of spirituality that has been privileged over the centuries, and what has been left aside on this journey? Because every exclusion reveals a choice, and every choice has a root right in the comments that makes sense to me. When wisdom speaks in Proverbs 8, she doesn't just assert her presence, she claims an essential role behind the scenes of creation. And the more you read carefully, the more you realize that this isn't a generic metaphor, but a conscious presence, an entity vibrating with its own identity. She doesn't observe from a distance. She participates. She isn't passive. She's active. And more than that, she seems to be revealing something that has been kept secret. As if each sentence were a key that unlocks a piece of hidden truth about the beginnings of the universe. Now imagine the impact of accepting that this wisdom is in fact a real consciousness, a living force that was with God before time. This not only expands our understanding of the spiritual lit implodes, doctrinal structures that have been cemented for centuries, because, in this case, we are faced with a feminine presence that predates matter, predates time, even predates the creation of the heavens and the earth. This changes everything, not because it conflicts with faith, but because it reveals how much it has been molded to fit into controllable, predictable formats. The idea of a cosmic feminine consciousness walking alongside God is not new. It resurfaces in other cultures, other scriptures, and other spiritual traditions that also speak of the Divine Mother, of personified wisdom, of the subtle light that precedes form. However, in traditional Christianity, this figure has been silenced, not denied entirely, which would be impossible, since she is present in the biblical text, but pushed to the sidelines like a theological footnote. Why? Because its presence reveals something that goes beyond literal interpretation. It exposes imbalance. It exposes how much the feminine aspect of the divine has been subjugated in favor of an exclusively patriarchal narrative. And it's not just about gender, it's about energy, essence, primordial balance. By excluding this entity from central theology, something much deeper was lost, the perception of the divine as totality. Wisdom is like a spark of order, intuition, and purpose. Its absence left a void that theology has never been able to fill. And perhaps that's why so many people feel something is missing from the dominant spiritual discourse. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this silencing of wisdom is not just historical or religious, it is also symbolic. It represents the erasure of intuition, of sensitivity, of the direct connection with the sacred. It represents the attempt to rationalize the mystery, to control the uncontrollable, to tame the creative force. And it is at this point that the journey becomes personal. Because recognizing the existence of wisdom as a living entity is also an invitation to reclaim parts of ourselves that have been silenced, parts that intuited, felt, understood. Even without logical explanation, this consciousness that was with God from the beginning may never have left the scene. Perhaps it remains present, whispering amidst the chaos, trying to remind us of what we were made to remember. And the most interesting thing is that, by listening to this voice, we are not just rethinking theology, we are opening space for a profound transformation. One that begins within. One that reorganizes our worldview, our spirituality, our purpose. Because it's not just about understanding the past, it's about accessing something that still pulses, that still acts, that is still available to those who choose to see with the eyes of the soul. This is a journey of reconnection with what has been forgotten, a return to original balance, a journey back to the origin, where the word was not just sound, but consciousness, where creation was not just light, but intention, where there was a presence alongside the Creator not as a subordinate, but as a collaborator. And perhaps, by remembering this, we'll also remember who we truly are. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. What's most intriguing about this journey is realizing that Proverbs 8 may not be alone in its boldness. Wisdom as a conscious figure, as a being prior to visible creation, is not exclusive to this text. She resurfaces in other sources, many of them kept outside the official canon, considered apocryphal or even banned by dominant religious structures. But precisely for this reason, they carry the kind of truth that is disturbing, that hidden truth that doesn't fit the mold and therefore has been veiled. And when you begin to connect the dots, what emerges is a figure that transcends cultures, religions, and a risen entity that has always been there, acting behind the scenes of creation like a forgotten presence trying to be remembered. The Book of Enoch, for example, considered too dangerous to be part of accepted scripture, presents us with a spiritual reality prior to the creation of man. There, we find accounts of beings who surrounded the divine throne before the formation of the world. Some were messengers, others guardians of mysteries. And there are also those who assisted the Almighty, described with reverence and awe. Enoch, who walks among the heavens, leaves us clues about entities that do not easily fit into the familiar categories of angels or archangels. They are primordial figures, cosmic intelligences. And among them, there are mentions of a presence that precedes chaos and is saddened by the fall of order, a consciousness that observes, alerts, and tries to maintain harmony. This description resonates almost identically with what Gnostic texts call Sophia living wisdom. In the Nag Hammadi manuscripts, for example, she appears as a direct emanation of the divine, a pure force that, by attempting to create without the permission of the whole, generates imbalance. But not out of malice, but rather out of compassion, a desire to act, a creative impulse. And her fall is, at once, a tragedy and a key to understanding. Because it is through her that chaos enters the narrative, but it is also within her that the seed of restoration resides. Sophia, in her journey of error and redemption, echoes the same voice we hear in Proverbs 8, a feminine voice predating time with an active role in the formation of the universe. Not as a rebellious deity, but as a force that chose to participate in creation, that, therefore, suffered the consequences of human misunderstanding. Her story was suppressed, fragmented, cut out, but never destroyed. Because there is something in her narrative that has survived the test of time, the sense that creation was not a solitary act, but rather a sacred dance between complementary forces. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this recurrence of wisdom in distinct texts, which never even crossed paths in time, points to a greater truth. When such different cultures, in such distant times, speak of the same figure with the same attributes and the same pain, we are no longer faced with a coincidence. We are faced with an ancestral archetype, a universal spiritual memory that resists oblivion. And this changes the way you read not only the scriptures, but also yourself. Because if there is a fallen wisdom that seeks to be heard, perhaps there is also within us a forgotten part that needs to be rescued. It's as if these forbidden texts were guarding a map, a secret route between the origin of the world and the origin of consciousness. They reveal that what we call original sin may not have been merely a human error, but the continuation of a previous cosmic fall of an entity he tried to create in his own way. And the most powerful thing about all this is realizing that this fall is not the end. It is the beginning of a return, of a reunion with the totality of the divine. Comment here that makes sense to me. The figure of wisdom, as presented in Proverbs, carries something that goes beyond the text, pulsates with an energy that transcends the literal. It invites us to see what is hidden behind the words, what vibrates between the sacred lines. When she says that she was with God playing before him at all times, rejoicing in the children of men, it is not merely symbolic speech. It is the portrait of divine intimacy, of a relationship that reveals as much about the Creator as about creation itself. And here, language reveals its true power. It does not describe, it points. And what is being pointed out, clearly, is a living presence. One that participates, feels, observes, and rejoices in what is being born. It is in this same direction that Jewish tradition points when it speaks of the Shekinah, the divine presence that dwells, descends, and manifests itself among the people. Shekinah is feminine. She is the glory of God, but also his welcoming, intimate, visceral side. She is the sensitive manifestation of the sacred. And, curiously, her image perfectly matches the voice we hear in Proverbs 8. Both share the same profile. They are ancient. They are at God's side, not created like humankind, but revealed. And when this connection is formed between wisdom, Shekinah, and Sophia, what emerges is a forgotten portrait of divinity, a reflection of the sacred that has been erased from the official narrative, but which has always been present in symbols, in dreams, in the deep intuitions of those who sense there is something more. Sophia, in mystical texts, is the emanation of the divine mind, the creative expression of pure thought. She is not just a concept, she is a being, a presence, a bridge between the ineffable and the manifest. And her fall, as we saw earlier, is not a mistake, it is a journey, a process that reflects humanity's own trajectory, leaving its origin, traversing fragmentation, seeking return. The symbolism here is powerful because it touches us directly. It shows us that the divine mystery is not only in the heavens, but also within us. That this wisdom is not just an external entity, it's a dimension of the soul that has been forgotten, but cries out for awakening. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because symbols are bridges. They don't just serve to decorate or illustrate. They are vehicles of revelation. And when the figure of wisdom is represented as a woman before any ideology or structure, there is a call for balance, for the return of the sacred polarity between masculine and feminine, between order and mystery, between the Word and the womb of creation. This has profound spiritual implications, because where there is symbolic imbalance, there is a distortion of power. And it is precisely this distortion that has caused the feminine side of the divine to be erased, suppressed, or transformed into abstraction. But the symbols remain. They traverse time like seeds, awaiting fertile soil. And when you encounter these echoes, whether in the Bible, the texts of Enoch, the Gnostic manuscripts, the Kabbalah, or even in your own dreams, something within you begins to reorganize. It's as if a dormant part of your soul recognizes an ancient pattern and says, I've seen this before. Because you saw it, because you participated, because this spiritual journey didn't begin now. It's the reflection of an ancient truth trying to re-emerge. The wisdom of Proverbs, the Shekinah of the mystical tradition, the Sophia of the Gnostic text soul point to the same axis. The divine is not unilateral. It never was. It has always been plural, and in this plurality lies power. There is revelation. There is the remembrance of what we were before fragmentation, of the times when we danced with creation in balance. And perhaps, in understanding this symbol, we are not just studying an ancient text, perhaps we are hearing a call, a spiritual whisper saying, return, remember, restore. Comment here, that makes sense to me. If wisdom was a real, living, conscious entity and was with God before all else, then the inevitable question is, where is it now? Because such a powerful presence doesn't simply disappear. It doesn't evaporate over time. It doesn't dissolve between the lines of an ancient text. It may have been silenced, hidden, distorted, but not destroyed. And perhaps this is the most disturbing point of this entire journey. The idea that wisdom's absence is not just a theological detail, but a spiritual factor with a direct impact on what we experience today. Creation, as presented in Scripture, is not merely an act of divine manifestation, is an expression of balance. Heaven and earth, light and darkness, day and night, masculine and feminine. Everything moves within a sacred duality. And wisdom seems to be the link between these poles, the bridge that allows the invisible to become visible, the eternal to express itself in time. When it disappears from religious discourse, something else disappears with it. Spiritual sensitivity, inner listening, sacred intuition. The space for mystery, the silence where the divine whispers. This absence is not merely symbolic. It shapes entire structures. If wisdom was removed from the center of the narrative, what remained was a fragmented spirituality, logical, authoritarian, one-sided. A spirituality that often distanced rather than brought closer, that judged rather than welcomed, that controlled rather than awakened. And perhaps, in this void, part of the spiritual chaos we experience today was born. A collective disconnection, a relentless search for meaning, a diffuse sense that we are experiencing something important, but unable to name what it is. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this supposed absence may actually be a pause, a silent wait. What if wisdom is still present, but speaking on a different frequency? What if it never left us, but simply withdrew until we were ready to recognize it again, not as an abstract concept, but as a living part of divine consciousness? This possibility changes everything, because it removes us from the role of spectators and places us as participants in the restoration of a balance that has been lost. The question then ceases to be, where is wisdom? And becomes, are we willing to hear it again? Because perhaps, in every intuition you feel, in every inexplicable shiver when touching a sacred text, in every sincere doubt that arises in the midst of faith, perhaps her voice is there, still whispering, still present, still trying to remind us of who we were before we were forgotten. And if that's true, then we're not just revisiting old passages, we're rediscovering parts of ourselves that have been waiting for this moment, for this listening, for this RECONNECTION. Comment here. I'm on this journey too. If you've made it this far, it's because this message touched you on some deeper level. Perhaps it awakened something ancient. Perhaps it confirmed an intuition that had been whispering within you for a long time. That's why it's worth continuing this journey together. This channel was created precisely for this, for those who feel there's more beyond what's been said, beyond what's been taught. If this content resonated with you, if any part of it touched you, made you reflect, or even gave you a new perspective, leave a like here. This shows that this connection we've created matters. And if you want to continue accessing these revelations, these behind-the-scenes insights into spirituality that almost no one talks about, subscribe to the channel. This is where we delve deeper, unafraid to touch on the mysteries, and tell me. In the comments, write "I'm with you until the end," just so I know you were truly there until the very last second. These words create an invisible bond between the speaker and the listener, and that's how we build this community. There's a video right here that complements everything we talked about. Click and stay with me there, because this journey has only just begun.